High egg prices send profits at largest U.S. producers soaring more than 700%. Is it because the wages increased for those who were fucking, producing the eggs? I'm not talking about the chicken. I'm talking about people that work in the poultry side. If that was the case, profit wouldn't surge. Okay? That's how profit works. Did the eggs become somehow more marketable? Was there like a big push? Did people really get excited about eating eggs? What led to this? How did their revenue double and their profit surged 700%, 718% last quarter? Oh, that's right. It says in the article because of a sharply higher egg prices. The company, which controls about 20% of the U.S. egg market, according to Reuters, said its average selling price for a dozen eggs in the quarter ending February 25th was $3.30, more than doubled the average of $1.61 a year earlier. Despite the higher prices, the total number of eggs it sold edged up 1%, so its overall revenue rose 109% to $997.5 million. The doubling of revenue was nothing compared to its profits, however. Net income soared to $322 million from only $39.5 million a year ago. The jump in revenue and profit had been expected, but easily topped forecasts. Shares of Cal-Maine were up 4% in pre-market trading. This is what happens when there's when this is like unfettered, unchecked capitalism, corporate greed. Everyone's raising the prices of everything. There's so much corporate consolidation. It happens in the gaming sector all the fucking time. Corporations, these massive publishers will turn around and fucking
eggs
report record profits, and then they will fire like 25% of their fucking workforce. Let's take a look at what happened with the egg prices in particular. While I go and microwave
eggs,
my chicken.
A typically unremarkable grocery list staple for most Americans, became a point of financial stress and confusion over the course of a single year. Between January 2022 and January 2023, the average price consumers were paying for a carton of eggs shot up by 150%, hitting an all-time high of $4.82 a dozen.
Have another egg.
No.
Egg companies sold their eggs to grocery stores at unparalleled prices, peaking from about $1.20 a dozen to $5.20 a dozen within 12 months. As a result, grocery stores were forced to hike up their egg prices to turn a profit. To make matters even more confusing, egg prices for retailers started to plummet at the start of 2023, dropping by at least $2.90 a dozen out of nowhere. To explain the dramatic swing in wholesale prices, big egg companies like Cal-Maine Foods pointed their fingers at two factors: a rampant flu that plagued their chickens, and, you guessed it, inflation. These companies want consumers to believe that the ridiculous sticker prices we saw in 2022 and early 2023 were necessary to make up for sick hens and rising feed costs. But here's where the numbers don't add up. Dominant egg producers not only made up for lower supply and increased costs, they profited off them big time. Just look at Cal-Maine Foods' gross profit margin. Gross profit margin
is the funniest thing that is just like, with increasing corporate consolidation and through a totally legal, totally cool concept known as price leadership, not price fixing. Let me just explain that one more time. It's price leadership, not price fixing. Totally legal, totally cool, totally above board. Companies basically recognize that like they can get away with fucking raising prices, and that's it. And there's not really anything the government can do about it. Well, there are some things that they could do about it. They could just like shut off the funnel of subsidies, for example. You know, they could just like point to inflation, like as though it's some totally unique, random thing that's happening that is absolutely outside of their control. Where the fuck is inflation coming from? What is inflation? I don't know.
Margin measures how much money a company earned after accounting for production costs. Cal-Maine Foods more than quadrupled its gross profit margin after raising the price of its eggs. If Cal-Maine fairly raised prices to offset inflation and the avian flu, its gross profit margin would stay about the same. So, To figure out what's really going on with egg prices, we talked to one of the leading experts on food monopolies.
I'm Angela Huffman. I'm the vice president and co-founder of Farm Action. Farm Action is a farmer-led nonprofit taking on corporate consolidation in the food system. Contrary to the narrative of these industry leaders, these price increases are not due to an act of God. It's just plain profiteering.
So what's the true story behind those sky-high egg prices? And who's to blame? And what can we do to make sure this never happens again? I'm June, and this is More Perfect Union. Now let's get cracking.
You know what? Maybe I will have some eggs. Toast?
Since Cal-Maine Foods is the largest egg producer and distributor in the U.S., we're going to keep our focus there. Cal-Maine's CEO, Sherman Miller, recently celebrated his company's record sales and net income for the second quarter of fiscal 2023. The company made over $300 million in the second half of 2022, while the price of eggs was skyrocketing. Millions of Americans were paying record prices for eggs, while Cal-Maine got rich.
How much of a monopoly do they have? They own 20% of the entire egg market in the United States of America. Now, technically, that's not a monopoly. Well, it's usually an oligopoly, but it doesn't matter because oligopolies still operate. That's nothing. 20% is nothing. One company controlling 20% is nothing. Okay. Everyone openly admits that Amazon controls e-commerce and is a monopoly. Everyone admits this, right? Amazon doesn't own 100% of the e-commerce market. So why do they have so much fucking power? 25% minimum for monopolies in economic theory. 20% is a gigantic percentage. Okay? It is a gigantic fucking percentage. When you own 20%, you have the opportunity to control pretty much the entirety of the marketplace. How can you do that? By basically doing, like I said, this thing called price leadership, where you decide, okay, we can actually raise prices, knowing full well that every other fucking company will absolutely follow suit, which they do always. Amazon is not 100% of the fucking e-commerce. It's only 45%. Well, I guess it's not a monopoly then. That's how that works. The illegal part of that would be price fixing. If they did it in some shady, cigar smoked filled room where they had this like backdoor dealing where they decided to raise prices specifically and deliberately and together, then that would be considered price fixing, which is illegal. But if one company does it, an industry leader does it, and then every other company that's like 4 or 5 other big ones that follow suit, then that's not considered price fixing. That's considered price leadership. So clearly, that's not illegal. I mean, duh, Hasan, that's very different. They could just not follow, but they always do because they're motivated by the same profit-seeking behavior that the big one is motivated by.
So, of course, they needed a defense for raising prices. And this brings us to our first claim, the bird flu. In the company's December earnings report, Cal-Maine's CEO attributed the company's record average selling prices for conventional eggs to a reduced supply related to the outbreak in the U.S. of highly pathogenic avian influenza. It's true that last year, avian flu outbreaks resulted in the loss of 43 million egg-laying hens. But here's the catch. In the same breath, CEO Sherman Miller says there have been no positive tests for this bird flu at any of Cal-Maine Foods' owned or contracted production facilities as of December 28, 2022. Not a single Cal-Maine hen died from bird flu. 0. Now, obviously, other egg producers were impacted by the bird flu. So one might reason that with supply down nationwide, grocery chains would understandably run to Cal-Maine to secure their egg stock for upcoming months and would be willing to pay a pretty penny to do so. And Cal-Maine Foods, being the massive corporation that it is, one that controls...
Don't the leading companies raise the prices because they feel like it, causing the other companies to do the same? Yes, that's what I'm saying. Look,
20% of the egg market would, of course, welcome and encourage all of those pretty pennies happily. Now, that would all make sense if the highly pathogenic avian influenza did in fact reduce supply in the way CEOs like Sherman Miller describe. But once we looked into it, we realized that the numbers aren't as black and white as they appear.
Also, yes, Yvenda, you are absolutely correct. Layoffs work in the same fucking way. That's right. If you have noticed how what do you call it? In the tech sector, there's like mass layoffs happening, regardless of whether a company is profitable or not, regardless of what the company's runway looks like. In certain companies, there's not even a layoff that's supposed to take place, but it's happening regardless. The reason for that is the same principle. It's monkey see, monkey do. That's it. It's nothing. There's nothing to it other than that. You got shareholders pressuring board members to take action to make their companies more lean because they're seeing other companies engage in this behavior. And I'm not just talking about like Meta firing the fucking VR team. I'm talking about literally just random, like Google firing people for unrelated reasons. Why are they doing it? Because everyone else is doing it. That's it. Amazon begins cutting, 18,000 workers in one go.
The egg industry experienced no substantial decline in egg production in the last quarter of 2022 compared to 2021.
The number of egg-laying flocks, on average, only dropped 6 to 8% from the year prior, according to the USDA.
In addition to that, that number was even further blunted by record high lay rates, meaning the existing egg-laying hens laid even more eggs than the year before.
As it turns out, the hit to egg supply wasn't as dramatic as companies like Cal-Maine want you to believe. The bird flu outbreak for sure doesn't account for the 150.5% increase in the net average price for a dozen of Cal-Maine's conventional eggs from one year to the next. Now, back to that other excuse corporations love to deploy when justifying price hikes: inflation. Although we might disagree on the factors causing inflation, we can all agree that it's happening. Costs are up across the board, and the egg industry is not exempt. However, according to its own presentation to investors, Cal-Maine's total farm production and feed costs in 2022 were just 22% higher than they were in 2021. Remember, the price you paid for eggs went up 150% in this time, and Cal-Maine's profit margins quadrupled. So while a price increase is expected to keep up with rising production costs, no narrative that the egg industry pushed seems to explain why dominant egg producers more than quadrupled their wholesale prices.
There's just no other supply chain excuse that would justify these increase in egg prices. Fact
It's just that they can get away with it. That's it. Because there was an egg virus outbreak. Bitch, they just described that there was no egg virus outbreak in the company that raised the fucking prices. That's the most dominant one. Are you listening with your asshole? Do your ears fucking work? Do your eyes work? It wasn't even an egg virus. It was the avian flu. Ask yourself why your first and immediate inclination is siding with the major egg producer. You're not an egg producer. Your dad's last name is not Cal-Maine. Why the fuck are you defending them? I don't understand. I don't understand why the first immediate round of defense comes from a random dude who has to eat eggs to fucking survive. And his parents are probably suffering as a consequence of this kind of inflation, which, by the way, factors into every industry. It works in the identical ways in every single fucking industry. So ask yourself why. Why reflexively do you immediately go, I gotta defend the egg company, man? They said, that there was a flu. He didn't even say avian flu, he said egg flu.
The fact that Cal-Maine is both raising its prices and grossly increasing its profit margins at the same time without any reasonable business justification for that suggests that it's foul play.
If a bird flu epidemic and inflation can't fully explain why egg prices soared over the last year, then what can? One clue is in the suspicious lack of price competition within the egg industry at large. Back in August, the USDA expected companies to start purchasing more chicks and increasing production while feed costs were moderating and egg prices were soaring.
So, in a competitive and normally functioning market, we would expect that one of these companies would lower their prices so that they could swoop in and take that market share.
You'd expect competition to start driving prices down, but for some strange reason, production didn't increase. Prices kept rising.
There seems to be a collusive scheme among these industry leaders to turn inflationary conditions and an avian flu into an excuse to gouge consumers and raise prices. Why produce more if you can make more money producing less?
You might be thinking, didn't you say that these big egg companies recently dropped their wholesale prices pretty significantly after all? So maybe there really was something exceptional going on behind the scenes that required some once-in-a-lifetime price increases? To be completely honest, we're also confused by the latest numbers. Angela, have you seen the drop in wholesale egg prices?
Yeah, it's pretty crazy, right? Although prices are still a lot higher than they were last year.
But where did that drop come from and why now?
Well, we're not seeing any major changes in the market that would explain these lower prices, just like there wasn't a substantial change to justify the massive price increases that we talked about before. There isn't a sudden increase in egg supply to bring down the prices or anything like that to easily explain this.
So these companies dropped their wholesale prices randomly?
Well, the USDA says that consumer demand for eggs is down a little bit due to resistance to the record high prices in grocery stores. In a recent report, the USDA actually pointed to the negative media attention on the issue of egg prices as a factor for why consumers are holding back. It wouldn't be the first time that a corporation quickly lowered its prices after being called out for price gouging in the news. Anything to divert attention elsewhere, especially with Easter coming up.
Yeah, I forgot about Easter.
Well, the egg companies haven't. They're desperate to win back consumers in time for the holiday.
Just so they can increase prices again?
Well, an increase in prices is the normal response to Easter every year. That's to be expected. But we're keeping an eye on it because it shouldn't be used as an opportunity to price gouge. There seems to be a new normal price for eggs, and the reason for that isn't the flu or inflation or even a holiday, it's corporate greed. And what Cal-Maine Foods and the other large egg companies did last year is extort billions of dollars from the pockets of American consumers by placing a tax on an essential good that everybody needs, plain and simple.
Is there anything that can be done to stop this from happening over and over again?
There is. We need to hold these companies accountable. We at Farm Action wrote a letter to the FTC calling on them to investigate these companies. They can prosecute any violations of our antitrust laws that they would find, and ultimately, they should get the American people their money back by seeking financial restitution for these abuses. Senator Jack Reed sent a letter to the FTC urging investigation, and then Senator Elizabeth Warren and Representative Katie Porter also sent letters to the top 5 egg producers in the U.S. asking for answers. Believe me, this isn't over until somebody investigates.
So there you have it. Not the most satisfying of stories yet. There's work to be done. Now, it's on the Federal Trade Commission to work in coordination with the Department of Justice and the USDA to crack down on corporations that use their monopoly power to price gouge the American people. On behalf of all Americans writing their grocery lists and planning their Easters, it's time for some answers.
This sounds like it was written by ChatGPT. I'm not even joking. I don't give a fuck what wrote it. It's real. That's it. And what? Find them because that'll teach them? No. I think the federal government has an incredible amount of power at their disposal. One thing that I just mentioned is subsidies, right? None of these industries would not even be profitable, but like they just wouldn't exist if it wasn't for a tremendous amount of fucking subsidies. Subsidies that we pay for with our taxpayer dollars. Another thing that we could do is put a price ceiling on goods, certain goods, if you want to start off with. Like, it just seems unimaginable, though. It just seems completely and utterly unimaginable because corporate consolidation, corporate power is supreme in this country. That's it. They get to do whatever the fuck they want, and you get to idly stand by and take it. You really don't have anything else that you can do about it. There are obviously different measures that countries have taken in the past, historically, like CCP being a good example of this, but you can never say shit like that.